Montgomery County 911, what is the emergency?
Hi, yes, I just called 911 to come, and there's two dead people in the back of my store. There's a woman that's alive, and she's breathing.
Tied up?
She's tied up.
Okay, and you're saying that there's one person is dead?
One person seems dead, and the other person is breathing. I need an ambulance right away.
Police are on the hunt for two suspects involved in the murder of a woman and the sexual assault of her coworker.
These two suspects showed up prepared to commit a crime. They were gloved up, they had masks.
It's a murder case that has stunned many here in Maryland and even grabbed national headlines. Jayna Murray was laid to rest this weekend after being killed in the yoga store where she worked. Now, in a twist few saw coming, her coworker has been charged with murder.
Listen here. There's always been issues in the workplace. There's no denying that, but you never expect things to spiral out of control the way they did in this case. A coworker got caught stealing and her colleague tried to hold her accountable. Instead of her just taking the loss, she planned something so cold-blooded and brutal, even detectives were shocked to discover the truth. This is the Mysterious Black Bandit, and I'm back with another juicy-ass story, so sit your juicy ass down. I'm sorry. Ashley said so, told me to say that. But if you're new to the channel, please make sure you hit the like, subscribe, and turn on all the notifications so you don't miss out on any of the stories when I upload. Now that that's out the way, let's get to this crazy behind story. Now, I don't know much about Bethesda, Maryland, but after a little research, I found out that it's not only one of the wealthiest places in America, but it is also known for its safety and trendy shopping areas like Bethesda Road. This upscale community sits just outside of Washington, D.C., making it a perfect place for stores like Lululemon to thrive. With so many government employees, private contractors, and professionals living nearby, there's no shortage of people with money to spend. Now, Lululemon Athletica was a popular retail store that sold leggings and other athletic apparel, and by 2011, its brand's popularity had skyrocketed. The store wasn't just known for its workout clothes. It became a go-to spot for people who cared about fitness, fashion, and, of course, status. If you wanted to work there, you had to be outgoing, fitness savvy, and knowledgeable about apparel to connect with the customers. Jayna Murray and Brittany Norwood both fit this description. Jayna was a 30-year-old who had always been passionate about fitness and had this approachable, bubbly personality that drew in her customers. On the other hand, 28-year-old Brittany was a bit more reserved and would keep to herself when she wasn't working with a customer. Despite their two totally different personas, they had been working the closing shift together for about 3 weeks, and while they were not close friends, they got along well enough to work together and didn't seem to have any issues with each other. Now, on the night of March 11, 2011, Jayna and Brittany were scheduled to close the store together. It was just their typical Friday evening. The store had its usual crowd of shoppers and nothing seemed to be out of the ordinary. Once their last customers left, they locked the door and cleaned up and organized and prepared for the next day. Now, as part of a standard anti-theft policy, before each shift ended, they were supposed to check each other's bags just to make sure no one was stealing. Well, during this routine check, Jayna found a pair of brand new leggings in Brittany's bag that wasn't paid for. At the time, Jayna didn't confront her about it, but she did let her know that this was a serious violation and she had to let the manager know. While Brittany was still there, Jayna goes into the office and calls the manager, and the manager tells her not to worry about it and she would handle it in the morning. Even after being caught, I'm not sure if Brittany didn't care or if she planned on quitting the next day because she didn't offer an explanation or anything. She kept the leggings and walked out the store. Now, less than an hour later, Brittany called Jayna claiming she didn't realize it, but she left her wallet inside the store. So she asked if she could meet her back at the store so she could go back in and get her things. With no reason to suspect anything out of the ordinary, Jayna agreed and met back at the store, but what happened next is truly disturbing. On March 12, 2011, around 8 a.m., their manager arrived at the store to open for the day. Her usual routine was opening the doors for the employees, turning on all the lights, and doing floor checks, but the second she stepped through the doors, she noticed that something was off. Clothes and shoes were all over the place. Blood was staining the floors and the walls. And then she heard a faint moan coming from the bathroom area. Afraid for her safety, she returned to the parking lot and seen this guy waiting at an Apple store and asked him if he would come check out the scene with her. As they stepped into the bathroom, they found Brittany slumped over on the wall in a daze and barely responsive. She had been gagged and her wrists and ankles were bound together with zip ties. With all this blood streaming from her face and on her body, she looked like someone who had barely escaped with her life. Now, after making sure she was okay, they continued through the store, and what they found next was even more disturbing. In the back hallway, her coworker Jayna was lying face down on the floor, drenched in blood, with her arms and legs twisted all sorts of ways. It looked like something straight out of a horror movie. After witnessing this disturbing scene, their manager called the police and reported what she believed was a robbery gone wrong. When the police arrived, they quickly surrounded the store and moved inside, checking every corner to make sure the intruder wasn't still there. While the police were still searching the premises, the paramedics rushed in hopes of saving Jayna, but due to her severe injuries, they pronounced her dead upon arrival. Now, Brittany, still bloody and barely able to talk, was rushed to the hospital to be treated for her wounds. Once she was stable, detectives sat down in the hospital room to hear her story about this attack.
Where do you work?
At Lululemon.
And how long have you been there?
Maybe a little over a month. I just transferred from our Georgetown store.
Are you a worker? Or are you a manager? Or what?
Educator, so just not a manager.
And so you were working last night?
Mm-hmm.
And so it was just Jayna and you?
Mm-hmm. From 7 to close. And she gave me her smart trips. And when we walked back out onto the floor, she was a little ahead of me, and there was someone who, they could her in her face. He turned to try to leave it like a back exit door, because it immediately sets the alarm.
Okay.
And they had me by the hair.
So there's definitely 2 people?
Yeah. Told me if they said another word, he would slit my throat. And Jayna kept yelling and fighting, and he just kept hitting her. And I think he dragged her into the bathroom, and she was still trying to fight with him, but they hit me a couple of times with just his hands,
okay.
And it would the side of my head, and it was just yanking my hair. And then the other one came out, and he had zip ties, and he zip tied my feet together and my arms together, and then he got me across the stomach and across the chest, and I just wanted to stop.
As she continued to tell her story, the investigators were just taking it all in, writing down every details in hopes of trying to figure out who these 2 men were. Now, at first, this seemed like a random robbery that had gone wrong, but as investigators looked a little closer, something felt off, even though they couldn't put their fingers on it yet. With the information Brittany provided, officers hit the street searching for witnesses and security footage that might help them catch these masked men. Now, while the investigation was going on, they kept in contact with Brittany, questioning her about specifics like what the men looked like or if she had heard any distinct voices or words, but she stuck to the same plain story. Now, although some of her answers were shaky, they kept the chase going. With this being such an upscale community, everyone was panicking, so investigators hit the news stations, offering up to a $125,000 reward for any information on the attack. As the investigators kept digging, they realized Brittany's story wasn't adding up. For one, there was no sign of forced entry, and blood was also found in Jayna's car, which Brittany admitted to moving, claiming she was too afraid to flee. Then, when they examined her injuries more closely, the cuts and bruises on her body looked shallow, and the zip ties around her wrists were not pulled tight like you would expect if someone else had tied her up. She also claimed the masked man had sexually assaulted her and Jayna, even saying she had been violated with a clothes hanger, but after examining them, there was no medical evidence to back that up either. Brittany's demeanor was very suspicious as well. Sometimes she was all emotional and crying, and at other times she was calm and composed. Then on top of that, she'll forget something she swore was important the first time she had told them the story. Now, what really made the investigators start looking at her sideways is when they examined Jayna's body. She had been attacked with at least 5 different weapons and had over 300 injuries. Her skull had been fractured in multiple places, her spinal cord was nearly severed, and there were deep wounds across her face, neck, and arms. The medical examiner said it was one of the most vicious attacks they had ever seen, and not the kind of violence you would see in a quick robbery. Basically saying whoever did this, it had to be personal. Now, while investigators kept Brittany comfortable and distracted, behind the scenes, they were taking a closer look at the physical evidence inside the store and the surveillance footage from nearby businesses. Inside the store, the forensic team noticed a trail of large bloody footprints near Jayna's body, suggesting a male attacker. At first, it seemed to confirm Brittany's story, but something was off. First of all, there were only 2 types of prints visible in the blood. One was actually Brittany's smaller footprint, and the other was that larger one. Then, after they followed the trail, it led them right to the employee area where they found a pair of size 14 Reebok sneakers sitting neatly on the shelf. Now, investigators wanted to be sure that these shoes didn't belong to the store, but after they checked the inventory, they found out that they actually did belong to the store. By this time, they were almost 100% confident about who they believed was responsible for this, but they needed to be sure. So they pulled up surveillance footage from Bethesda Road, and just as they expected, the footage only showed Jayna and Brittany re-entering the building at 10:05. No one else approached the entrance or fled the scene. Brittany's story was destroyed. By March 16, 2011, they were done with Brittany's games and were ready to make a move, but they needed to play it smart to lock her in without tipping her off. So they set up this trap. First, they called and asked her politely to come up to the police station so they could get fingerprints and hair samples from her to help catch their attacker. Brittany, who was still acting like a victim, agreed to do it. March 18th comes and Brittany comes walking into the station all cool and confident, speaking to everyone like she knew she had this in the bag. She sits across from the detective and they ask her to walk them through that night one more time. At this point, Brittany had the whole story memorized and started telling them the same vague behind story. Just wanted to see what she would come up with. They mentioned the surveillance footage that only showed her and Jayna entering the building at 10:05. Brittany shrugs her shoulders and says maybe they snuck out another way. The investigators knew that they had her, but they continued to play it cool and was like, oh, okay, maybe we didn't see them or something. Then they started asking her questions like why she moved Jayna's car and how she managed to escape with minor wounds when Jayna didn't. By this time, you could see it in her face. She knew she had messed up. She started shaking and stuttering and trying to explain herself, but nothing she said would take away all this evidence that was pointing directly at her. After hours of questioning, the detectives had finally had enough. They read her rights and arrested her for the murder of Jayna Murray. In October 2011, Brittany Norwood's trial finally began and she pled not guilty to first-degree murder. The prosecution didn't waste any time painting Brittany as a cold-blooded killer who savagely attacked her coworker, Jayna Murray, over a pair of stolen leggings. They explained how Brittany lured Jayna back to the store only to ambush her shortly afterwards. Now, Brittany was well aware of the company's policy that required employees to check their coworker's bag at the end of the shift. But here's the thing, she didn't believe Jayna was going to say anything. Although Jayna didn't confront Brittany about what she had taken, she did report the incident to management. They stated Brittany either didn't want to lose her job or face criminal charges for theft, so she put together this plan to kill her coworker and cover up the crime. As the trial continued, they showed the jury all the horrific crime scene photos of blood all over the walls and floors, and then brought in a medical examiner to go over Jayna's autopsy. She testified that Jayna had suffered between 105 to 331 wounds, all inflicted while she was alive. In addition to multiple abrasions, bruises, and cuts, Jayna suffered 6 blunt force wounds that were deep enough to cause bleeding and bruising of the brain. The examiner explained that Brittany's attack was especially brutal, delivering a level of force comparable to what someone might suffer in a severe car crash. She went on to say, Brittany had turned the whole store itself into a weapon, using everything from a metal rod to broken pieces of store fixtures, leaving Jayna completely unrecognizable. Now, Brittany's defense acknowledged that she was responsible for Jayna's murder, but argued it wasn't a planned act. They claimed Brittany lost control during a sudden and intense argument about the stolen leggings. What they really wanted to do was convince the jury that it was a moment of rage and not a premeditated act of violence. They argued that Brittany's injuries, though not as severe, proved there had to be a brutal fight. They tried to steer the jury's attention toward the idea that Brittany had been pushed to the edge, suggesting that the chaos inside the store wasn't an act of a cold-blooded killer, but of someone desperate and terrified. With all the evidence stacked against Brittany, on top of her past history of theft that included losing an academic scholarship after stealing from her classmate, there was nothing they could do to get her charges lowered to second-degree murder.
Had you been told that, Brittany was suspected of stealing stuff?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I'm part of the leadership team, so all of us knew, but we didn't have concrete proof. And then I remember I talked to Jayna. She called me at 9:46. She asked me, did I sell Brittany some Crocs? And I was like, no. And she was like, because when I back checked Brittany, she found a pair of Crocs in there, still had the tags on. Okay, so we got proof now. Okay, we have the proof that she stole them.
This trial lasted a good 6 days, but it took the jury a little over an hour to come back with the verdict. In January of 2012, Brittany was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, and she will spend the rest of her life locked up at the Maryland Correctional Institution for Women. 30-year-old Jayna Murray was a very ambitious woman, just months away from earning her MBA at Johns Hopkins University. She was described by her family as a fearless and outgoing person who had a promising future, but all was taken away over nothing. Now, even behind bars, Brittany never fully explained why she did it or even apologized for what she did. Like I said in the beginning, although you may have worked with someone for months or even years, you never truly know the monster they might be hiding inside. All right, family, that'll bring another one to an end, and I really hope you enjoyed it. If you haven't already, please make sure you hit the like, subscribe, and turn on those notifications so you don't miss out on any of the videos when I upload. I hope you all have had a wonderful, wonderful day, and until next time, stay mysterious, my friends.